Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Step into the Pivot. We are so happy to have you here. And we are also so happy to have Alison Nakamura Netter with us. Alison, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation. And people can read your bio in the notes, but you're really, I love what you've written here, that you're a purpose-driven nonprofit leader. You are currently executive director of Zana Africa Foundation, which supports girls in Kenya from adolescence to adulthood. I love some of those things and some of your experience with all kinds of causes like combating trafficking in Cambodia, food insecurity, those kind of things which are super important. So I'm really excited to hear your story today. So even I'm going to let you take over and do talk a little bit more about Allison.
Thank you, Teresa, and hi, Alison. So great to be here with you. So delightful. And, we share a passion for a lot of the items, concepts, ideas, and then practices and actions to address some of the issues that Teresa just spoke into. I love serving on the Zena Africa board alongside with your amazing leadership as someone who really makes things happen. And I'm bringing that up because this is how we met, um, without going into too much detail there, because this is going to be about you and your personal story. I wanted to highlight how much passion we have, both of us, and how much time we've spent essentially looking at and talking about the idea that it is, fundamentally important for the health and wellness of the whole world to invest time, energy, resources in equipping girls with the tools that they need to safely navigate puberty. And as I've heard you say, unlock their potential. And then also, this is really all about everybody's, control over bodies and decisions and future. And I just absolutely love, sitting down with you and talking about all these big picture conversations. But I know that one of the reasons you're so, good at what you do is because you come from it supported by your own experiences, your own story, and your own, you know, life events that have shaped you. And we're looking forward to hearing from you on this podcast about exactly that. So tell us about some of the major pivots that you've experienced that you would say have shaped you the most.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivana. These are such good questions, and I'm just so happy to be here to share a little bit about my story in the hopes that it could potentially inspire someone else to kind of lean into their own purpose and their own potential. I would say one of the biggest pivots I've had was changing careers at age 30. I'm 47 now, so at the time, 30 felt like so old, and I realize now that's somewhat laughable because you're relatively young at that age. But I had been working in public relations. I was in a kind of a fast track kind of corporate path where I was working in marketing communications for a PR firm, doing PR from everything from luxury baby fashion to luxury goods. I got to go to the Academy Awards and be on the red carpet and be with celebrities and all this work. While it was kind of fun and exciting for someone who is in their 20s and approaching 30, it was really just not aligned with my values. I felt like it was just somewhat vacant in ways. And so I decided at that time to pursue a degree in social work. And I think what felt really scary about it is that I was living in Manhattan at the time. I think social work as a career is known not to be financially lucrative. And so there was a lot of risk that went into that, and a lot of fear that went into it. But I knew that there was something internally guiding me that was really aligned with my values that led me to pursue this career. And, I did it and I never looked back. But it was really, really scary at the time and really a turning point in my life. I would say, doing that pivot of changing my career and then becoming a mother were two of the biggest changes in my life that brought me to where I am today. So.
Well, I was going to say that, so many women, like you talking about this, I think it's so important because so many women are scared of that, right? Scared of changing careers, scared of all those kind of things. So can you talk a little bit more about how that, moved you forward into more of a personal growth, emotional health journey, right?
Yeah.
Just made you more who you are. Because I think from what I heard from you so far is you really kind of listen to your calling. You listen to what felt important to you. So can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, what I wanted to add is that, as a child, I always wanted to help others. So there was something, in part of me that always felt kind of like a seeker in many ways. And to this day, I still kind of consider myself a seeker. And helping others was this kind of value that was instilled to me by my mom. And she kind of had that old kind of adage, there, but for the grace of God go I. So anytime she was in her career as a nurse, she was always wanting to help people. She would always say, there, but for the grace of God go I, right? You could be that person. I am you and you are me. And I think for me, when I was in my 20s and kind of struggling with anxiety and all these fears around what I would be, I was drawn back to that phrase over and over and over again. And when I decided to make that pivot and kind of go back to what my mom had taught me, I felt very much more in line with myself. And I felt like once I made that pivot, I was really able to kind of connect to this more intuitive place in my life and really remind myself that kind of that feeling of wanting to pursue something or going back to like a certain thing that you heard as a child. There's something there that you can really connect with as a person, and it kind of will help you to feel more aligned with yourself and your decision. So deciding to make that journey, while it was scary at the beginning, ultimately it led me to a much stronger place of empowerment, of agency, of realizing, that feeling that I had, that calling that I had, it was worth pursuing, right? Because I think as people, as women, as individuals, you're like, well, I have a curiosity to pursue something, but then there's these other thoughts will come in. Well, what if it doesn't work out? What if you don't make enough money? What if it doesn't align with X, Y, and Z? Or maybe these preconceived notions of who you should have been, right? Oh, you should go into finance. You should become a lawyer. You should become a marketing executive. But those things I didn't never really wanted to do. And all those hats and those labels never really fit me. So when I was able to really connect with my inner voice and kind of this curiosity and this kind of like connect with my gut feeling, my inner intuition, I was able to really grow as a person. So I think in terms of my personal growth and my mental health and emotional health, it's really just was the right choice for me. So I feel really grateful to myself and to the people around me for guiding me on that path, particularly my mom, who really instilled these values in me. So
Well, and I was also going to say too, as you were talking, that, one of the things I thought as you were talking is sometimes we feel like we're here because it's what the rest of the world expects from us, right? It's where we almost feel that the rest of the world thinks we should be instead of being more true to
yeah,
ourselves, right? Like that's what I was thinking as you were talking, because I think we get stereotype, and I don't know if stereotype is really the right word. Evie, I'd love for you to tell me here what you think, but it's not really even a stereotype. It's just kind of what we think the world expects from us, and we do that instead of what we really have a passion for.
yeah. Yeah, that was very much my experience. Yeah, and please add in, but that was my experience coming from particularly like there's two sides of my family. So my mom was a nurse and pursued that a goal in nursing, but really a focus on supporting marginalized people. So she worked in inner cities, and then as she developed in her career, she worked on hospice, so doing end of life work. And so she always instilled in me, you can be whoever you want to be. You can do anything you want to do. She's a feminist without labeling herself as a feminist. She comes from the 60s and that time. But on the other side, my dad is a little bit more traditional. And I think I was raised in a household that was like, seek a profession, become a doctor, become a lawyer. And if you're not going to do that, then you need to be at like the head of whatever firm it is that you do. So go into finance, go into marketing, whatever that is, but you have to succeed and go to the top of that field that's going to be lucrative and have very clear boundaries for success and a clear pathway. And I remember I even studied for my like series 7 exam, and I'm like it was I remember going to Ann Taylor and putting on this like weird gray suit and going to interviews in the city like when I was like 19, and I was like, this could not be farther from who I am. And I was trying to fit into this like I'm going to become a stockbroker. Like, it was so far from who I was and what I wanted to be. And so I think, yeah, I think in terms of growth and kind of growing as a person, I think you have to really listen to that inner voice because sometimes it just doesn't fit. You can put on the suit, you can do all these things, and it's not right. And you're going to be uncomfortable and you're not going to feel powerful. And you probably won't end up doing a good job because you're going to be so unhappy the whole time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this a little bit more because you said several really interesting things and you're using some words that are we could, we could mix and match and move around, but it's really the energy that you're talking about that makes a difference. And we often get folks on the podcast commenting about this. So I love some sort of from a consistency of our conversation perspective to unpack that with you. I also get a lot of these questions at Courageous Being, like, how can I tell the difference? So I'm going back to that moment where you're basically describing, I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened, but kind of like if I was making a movie about this, I'd put you on the red carpet and have you basically have your realization about this isn't for me, right? At the moment when you're there and you're in the midst of all this, big
Yeah.
hype, but something doesn't feel right. And then later you say, okay, now I'm switching. And there's, you tell us about Manhattan and what I would imagine is bill paying, right? And how is that going to work if I pivot into social work? So I'd love to hear you talk more about these different sensations basically that we end up experiencing that can feel, okay, you said at one point scary. It feels scary to switch, but it feels so like that's me because this isn't me. And then you said this was so uncomfortable. You talked about, the skirt, then Ann Taylor in Series 7, and then feeling the discomfort. I feel like you're right here with something that is essentially the best advice we can give people, but it gets very elusive and it's hard to put it into, a succinct sentence. Sometimes I'll say to people like it will feel expansive as opposed to contracting, or it will feel like it's really healthy, but it may not feel easy, it may not feel comfortable. From your experiences, can you tell us more about this difference between this is good for me
Yeah.
versus this is really taking more than it's
Yeah.
giving?
That's such a good question because I think it's a hard thing to figure out, right? Like knowing the difference between these feelings, like in your gut, or these feelings of presence. And it took me a while to get to the point, and I'm still working on it today, where I can kind of differentiate between what's maybe external or what's unhelpful, between what is like my inner calling and what I know is right. So you have to like sit with those feelings for a while. But for me, I think I was able to really learn to understand myself because I took a lot of time, in going to therapy. And I think that, I had someone who was an elder to me who I still work with to this day. And I really think of her now as more of an advisor or more of like almost like an extension of family, even though those like, boundaries are still very present in that she's a practitioner and I'm her client. Um, but I had the advice of this elder who really kind of helped me to, in through our discussions, really helped me to identify my inner voice and my inner direction. And so when you say that when you're speaking with people that you work with, Evie, is that something will feel expansive. Like I realized that I remember walking across Central Park from my apartment on the Upper West Side to the Upper East Side, which is where my graduate school was at the time, and going into the school setting for the first time and kind of doing the meet and greet with all the other people, and you're meeting people from all over the world at various life stages. Who you have like a retired attorney who wants to go into social work, you have a young person straight out of college, you have a mom with 3 kids who wants to go into this. So people at various life stages from all walks of life, every culture, international students, urban students, suburban students coming in. And I just felt so at home. So it was like this almost kind of like this like I can kind of like drop everything in a way. And it was scary because you're going to have to, in social work school, you do a lot of like inner work and group work where you're really having to unpack a lot of stuff in order to like be of service to others. But I felt very much in the right place. And you just kind of feel it in your body. You feel it in your comfort level, you feel it in your energy, your heartbeat, your all of these things. And so I think I'm forgetting your question that you asked, but I hope I'm answering it.
You're answering it. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
exactly. The energy,
Yeah.
the heartbeat, the
It's
body. And may I just add here, Teresa, because I happen to know this about Allison. You work out a lot,
yeah.
and you introduced me to a modality that is really interesting from this, kind of like combination perspective of, paying attention to different bodies while working out the physical body. Can you connect what we're talking about with the, physical practice that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do it every day. So I do it at least 20 minutes a day. And it's this modality called the class. So it's like mind, body, and spirit all kind of mixed into one. And do you want to just describe it, Evie? Like, is that so? It's a lot of like releasing, like a releasing of like letting go of like what is not serving you, and then creating the space for other things to kind of come to you. Would you say that's an accurate
Yeah.
of
And
it?
here's what's really cool about it, which is why I was like, wait, what? The when you if you were to look at the videos, let's say that we follow on mute, they look like your traditional cardio or strength
Yeah,
training videos. But if you turn on the sound and you listen to the teacher, everything, all the cueing and the music, it's all intentional and it's connected to the movement. And so I've experienced, having done other forms where there's like a disconnect between we're listening to a random song and then the teacher is really nice, but they're just like saying these motivational things that are so disconnected from how we're moving the body. They are linking it in this modality. And after the 20 minutes, it just feels like you get a much bigger bang for the buck. Is that how you experience it too?
yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I went in studio because it was in Tribeca and I used to live in Manhattan. Now I'm out in the suburbs, but it was downtown New York in an area called Tribeca where the studio was. And you're in a room with like 30 people and everything is really intentional. I think there's even like crystals in the floors when Taryn designed it, like energetically to like ground this space and everything's beautiful and smells really lovely. And there's so much intention in the in actual space, but you're in this room moving with all these people in this way. And there is such a powerful release of movement, but to your point, like the smells, the sounds, the cueing of music, the messages that they share, it's all kind of designed to connect mind, body, and spirit, but also have this beautiful physical experience at the same time. So you're sweating, but you're also feeling like you're emotionally like cleansing yourself in some way. I don't know how to describe it. It's so funny
Yeah.
when I talk to people about it. They're like, "Are you in a cult?" Like, no, I swear I'm
But
not. But it's this amazing, powerful
yeah,
thing.
no, but
Yeah,
we've talked about that before, but for everybody that's their own thing too. Like,
yeah,
I'm a big walker, like, and so for me, sometimes it's a release just to go out there in nature, whether I'm just listening to the sounds around me, or I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm listening to music, or I'm doing whatever, right? I think everybody can have their own version of that. And I think that to me, it's almost like a reset, right? It gives me the opportunity to reset whatever that looks like, right? So yours might be different than mine, which might be different than Evie's, which,
yeah,
everybody has to experience that in their own way and some, but it's such a great practice is the word I'll
yeah,
use for to
exactly.
do it no matter what that looks like. For some people it might be yoga or
Yeah.
everybody has their own thing.
Yeah, I have a friend who calls, she's like, every day I have to do 20 minutes of joyful movement. And so it's anything.
Yes.
It could be a walk,
Right.
walking her dog, jumping around her room with like music
Right.
blasting, but it's like joyful movement, right? And so when I don't create the space to work out, I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna go move. I'll like go play with my dog in the yard for 20 minutes or whatever it is.
Yep.
Just
And
step away from
I
your,
think it's just the intention to do it and the doing,
yes,
right? It's not even just the attention to it. It's that you have to do that. And it's so good for you to do. I mean, and it could be that take those 20 minutes and go sit on the floor and play with your child. I mean, just to clear your mind of whatever's going on. So I love that part of this conversation. can we spend, we're kind of getting down on time. It goes so quickly.
It really does.
But I'd love to hear like those aha revelations you've had. You've talked about a couple of things that have happened. Can you just talk at a high level about some of those kind of aha revelations?
Yeah, so I would say there's two things. Like one, through all of this, I've realized that like I'm a seeker. I'm like constantly like asking, okay, what is like the bigger purpose here? Or what is my place in all of this? Meaning like the world. Um, and which my friend used that word with me like maybe 5 years ago. It was actually an old friend I hadn't seen in so long. We're at actually a mutual friend's wake. And I was like, oh, it's so nice to see you. And she's like, it's so nice to see you too. Like we were always so fond of each other. She was actually my brother's ex-girlfriend. So it just wasn't someone that I was like seeing all the time. And she was like, she's like, you're a seeker like me. And I'm like, that's exactly what it is. Like she just like it connected the dots for me. And I was like, gosh, yeah, Adib, you're right. Like we are both this type of person. And that's why we've always felt this like really deep connection every time we see each other. And so that was one because I was always kind of wanting more than like what was prescribed to me, I think, in a way. And two, so that was one aha. And then two, it was that I can always pivot again, right? So it's like if I'm ever drawn to doing something else or, a creative pursuit or, hey, I want to write a children's book or whatever that is, you can do those things, right? And the thing that is being called to you is something that you can pursue. And if it keeps coming up again and again and again, and you keep getting these pings of like, oh, I think I want to explore this thing. It could be like starting a garden in your yard or whatever it is, or it could be again writing a children's book or opening a store or whatever that is. You can do it. It made me realize I can do it. I can do this thing that I decide to put my mind to. And if the intention is there and it makes sense, that's something that I can pursue. So I think it really helped to build myself of like my sense of personal agency. So that pivot, that initial pivot of changing my career made me realize that I can do this again and again and again and again, should I choose to. And then becoming a mother too, just makes you, I think, for me at least, it just felt more expansive. My world grew in so many beautiful ways and it made me realize so many more things are possible than I didn't know were possible before. So, yeah.
We could stop right here. This is such a beautiful closure. And I would love it if you could offer some additional wisdom from this platform. So, the position where you're commenting on pivot that you initiated, disruption that you caused intentionally because you were noticing that something was brewing that was not good for you. So, the pivot that you were talking about was something that we could say you did have some control over.
Yeah.
And yet it was in response to something that you were noticing, this is not good. This is not going to be good if I continue to just ignore basically the signals that I'm getting. So I
Mhm.
wanted to connect those two. Is the fact that you initiated this pivot and then had the aha moment that you could pivot again and again, is that helpful when you're thinking about the pivots that you've had in your life? And we don't have to like dissect them, just big
Yeah.
picture. When you're thinking about the pivots that are, the ones that that you don't initiate, that, hit you, that show up and they're unwanted.
Yeah, I think that going through, so this was like a self-directed pivot, right? But I hear what you're saying. There's going to be things that come up in life or things that have come up in life that are not self-directed pivots, right? Could be death, illness, some kind of calamity going on. Yes, I think it absolutely has prepared me for when those things happen, when, things don't they come out of the blue. I was going to say something else, but it's like not appropriate for YouTube or wherever this is being recorded. But yeah, I think it made me realize that like I have the inner resources and capabilities to manage whatever situation is going to come at me. It might be difficult, it might be painful, it might be exhausting, stressful, but it makes you realize, I think, once you've kind of developed that inner resource or inner guide, that you can handle what's going to come. And it might be really challenging, but it's definitely possible to overcome or see something through for sure.
I
All
love
right.
this.
Yeah, I love this conversation too. And we could just go on and on, but unfortunately, we're out of time.
It
I feel like it goes so quickly.
really
Um,
does.
it does, doesn't it? Thank you so much, Allison, for being with us today. I think there was a lot of great little nuggets here that I think our listeners can really take away with. So I really loved it. Evie, what do you have to add?
I want to say the words. Alison, thank you so much for this final comment and reply to my question, answering our final question, which we ask all guests about how was this pivot a step forward? And we have this ritual. It's kind of a thing that we do at the end. And I just love what you offered here that when we are brave and we initiate some of these self-directed pivots, and then also even when we do some of the practices on a daily basis, you mentioned 20 minutes of this, intentional movement, it's going to pave the way and prepare us for when an unintended pivot takes place.
Yes,
So, could we say that that's how your pivot was a step forward? So we
absolutely.
ritually close out our conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it was a step forward. Yes, I would say that's exactly the case. And it also, yeah, it just expanded my world in so many ways. It was everything. Sorry, my phone is just ringing, so I apologize. But yes, 100%, 100%. That's the way you just phrased it is spot on. Yeah, the pivot was the most expansive thing that I wouldn't say has ever happened to me that was like self-directed, I guess. I caused it to. It didn't happen to me. I was a catalyst in that, but yeah, expanded my world in ways I never thought possible and allowed me to even see the world, parts of the world that I've never could imagine seeing before, Cambodia, Kenya, you know,
Yeah. And
all
and
of this.
and it was scary. It's fear. And but like and I talked to so many people, so many women who, are scared of doing something like that, but find out at the other end that they're way better or, are in a position where they're really not happy, but they don't really want to do anything about it. And sometimes they're forced to, or sometimes they make the decision on their own and end up being much better for it. Because I think if you do that, your passion shows through and it just and every bit of that just makes you happier. So yeah.
Totally. Thank
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here,
you.
Allison. We really enjoyed our conversation today. And Even and I thank everybody for listening to us today. So we will see you again in a couple weeks with another guest. And remember, if you have a pivot, step into it.
Thank you both so much. This was great.